Hopefully the sound works. And of course it doesn't. Hold on. What's that? Oh, yeah, maybe that's my problem. Hold on. Yep, that's what I did. Oh, yeah. Yay. It's like I just got an idea.
Two Babylonian kings, the father, Nebuchadnezzar, and then his son, Belshazzar. They're both filled with pride because of their imperial power. And so, like in chapter 2, God warns them both through dreams and then visions, which, also like chapter 2, only can interpret. He says that both kings are to humble themselves before God, and both kings arrogantly resist. So Nebuchadnezzar is stricken with madness. He becomes like a beast in the field. But then he humbles himself before God, and his humanity returns to him. He's restored as king. This is in contrast with his son, Belshazzar, who doesn't humble himself before God, and he's assassinated that very night. Now, these two stories draw this imagery from Genesis chapters 1 and 2 and Psalm 8, where humans are depicted as the royal image of God. He's given them authority to rule over the beasts of the field and the birds of the air on behalf of God, who is the world's true king. But when human kingdoms forget that, when they rebel and make themselves and their power into a god, they become less than human, like violent beasts who will face God's justice. Which brings us to chapter 6, the pair of chapter 3. And this time it's Daniel.
Okay, that's all you get. Can you go ahead and get the light again, please? Okay, so these two chapters, as the video said, are about God judging kings and kingdoms. And that is what the middle of the chiasm is all about. And so I think it would be good for us to, as we read through these chapters, just kind of look at some of the details of this judgment and what exactly is going on, and see if we can't figure out why would that be the most important thing, at least in this section of the book. Okay, so what I would like you to do, and I'm going to try to move through this a little bit quicker because we're going to go through the whole chapter. We're in Daniel chapter 4, and we're going to go through the whole chapter. And we also have to do a quick divergence to Genesis. So to get all of that, and we have to get it through all of them tonight. So we're going to keep moving fairly quickly. So what I want you to start with is the first 10 verses of Daniel chapter 4. And the three questions are, so I want someone at your table to actually read those 10 verses out loud. And then the three questions are, how are the first three verses more like an ending than a beginning? The king's state in verse 4. And how is Daniel described in these verses? Okay? And so read those 10 verses, answer those three questions, and then we will reconvene. And go.
To the nations that every day
history is huge. Tell me what. Laying in my bed, this is my room. I saw a large change. Reaching height. All the world was meant to be Sorry. Right?
Take one back.
He's raising something for what happened in the past. Let's say this happened, that's really cool. Hey, something cool happened. That's how I would. Praise God for cool thing happened. But we don't know what it is. My pleasure to tell you. They say he's the chief of the
It's almost like he's having all the fortune cookies. It's like the Greek magician. In that.
Give him more credit to Daniel, and Daniel's God.
From when I first started reading it, I thought a little different. I don't expect the story to be up there taking the bow and everything. Before the story even gets told about what the dream is or anything else.
Yeah. Like, let me tell you, this is great. It still doesn't.
Yeah, this is all great stuff. Now tell me what it is.
Right.
He's described as chief of magicians.
He was funny, made him something else.
4. So look at 4.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We kind of already talked about how he's described, right?
I know that that shows he still doesn't get it. Magic is something. Even though.
What if you're saying 9?
Okay, you may not be gotten through all the questions, but that's okay. We're just going to keep moving here. And so how are the first 3 verses more like an ending than a beginning? What do you guys see there? Okay, Jay?
It's a benediction,
How so?
in that it is a blessing.
Okay. Yeah, and so to me what it reminds me of is there are some movies which the very opening scene is really towards the end of the movie. rest of the movie, or at least the majority of it, is telling you how they got to that point. Sort of what this is. The opening scene of the chapter is King Nebuchadnezzar. He is talking about the kingdom of God, and he extols the Lord as the Most High God, and he praises God. It sounds a little bit like a psalm, almost, if you look at, like verse 3. And it's talking about God's power throughout history. And maybe even a conclusion you can make is that even though it may not always look like God is in charge, God is always in charge. And that's sort of, that's where he finds himself at the beginning. And then in verse 4, it's like he goes back to how he got to this place. Yes.
People don't know what a chiastic construction is. There's one right here.
Go ahead.
So it is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders. That's the first part of the chiasm.
Okay.
The second part, the last part of the chiasm is, how great are your signs and how mighty are your wonders.
Verses. And so, Ron, talk about what verse do you see the first thing you said, and what verses are you looking at?
So verse 2,
Okay.
4:2 is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders.
Okay.
And you pair that up with verse 3, how great are your signs, how mighty are your wonders.
Okay. Does everyone see that? Okay.
The middle of the chiasm is that the Most High God has performed for me.
So if you go, what's in between the two? So you have signs and wonders in verse 2, signs and wonders in verse 3, and what's in between those two signs and wonders is the Most High God has performed for me. And so in that particular chiastic structure, what the author wants you to see is the Most High God performed for me. That's the key. Ron, is that what you see?
Yes.
Yeah. Good catch. That's very good. I did not catch that.
As you know, chiasms can involve a single verse that can involve whole chapters of the Bible.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so thank you, Ron. So in verse 4, what is the king's state? How's he doing? He's doing good, right? He's in his palace, he's contented, he's prosperous. Those are good, and good, all right? And then, but while things are good, and good, he has this dream, which is not good. And so he calls Daniel, and how is Daniel described? What does Daniel have? Spirit of the holy gods. And so he's described as someone who has insight into something that no one else does. And so, we get there's the intro, the God's Spirit dwells in Daniel. We're talking about the Spirit